I'm Denise.
She's a non-fiction editor. And I'm Louise.
She's a fiction editor. And together,
we're the Editing Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Editing Podcast. We're delighted to be chatting to a guest who's already been on the show, but this time he's talking about a different aspect of independent publishing.
That's right. David Unger has joined us again from California, and we're going to be delving into creating audiobooks and working with a narrator. So hello, Dick and David.
Hello, happy to be here again and looking forward to chatting with you.
Yes, this is going to be a good topic. I think our listeners are going to be very interested in this.
So, audio's the big,
yes.
It's a huge thing. It's a huge thing.
David, you're taking all of your novels from the page to the ear with audiobooks. So that's an additional cost for an indie author to bear. So what was it that made you decide to take the plunge into creating audiobooks for all of your novels?
Well, something you already said. I read somewhere that a couple of years ago that audio sales accounted for 40% of book sales. And that was a couple of years ago. And I'm thinking, well, 40% of book sales, and I'm not making any of those sales. I need to have my books available in audio. And so many people that I know listen to, and I'm one of them. I'll get in my car because I'm in Southern California. I'm in my car a lot. And I listen to books. So I thought, well, I need to get into that arena.
And so the other aspect of that is that some authors do their own audiobook narrations, and with varying results, I think. But you've gone down the safe and perhaps the wise route, I think, of working with a professional voice artist. So first of all, how did you go about searching for one, and what's the can you talk a little bit about your process for evaluating that person and booking them?
Well, I would have loved to do my books myself, and because, as you know, the main character in my books is based on me, so I thought, oh, I could do a good job with that. But I realized I'm not very good at doing the other characters. So I really needed someone. So I thought if maybe with my nonfiction books, I could do that. Yeah. But with the fiction, and you've got all these different characters, I felt I really needed somebody who could do the women's voices, do different accents, bring a different depth, nuance to the characters. And that's what I discovered. It's an amazing process when you hear somebody else read your book. Because I've been taught, Louise, you taught me this, I believe, that when in my editing process, I do read the book aloud. So I'll read it, but I'm reading it. So everybody has my voice, all the characters. I don't do different characters when I read it. So when I hear somebody else do my characters, they come to life for me in a whole different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how did you go about finding someone who could do this then? I mean, where does an author go if they decide I need a voice artist? Where do you go to find them? How do you go about getting those samples?
Well, I gather there probably multiple ways, but I only know the way that I went.
Okay.
There's an outfit called ACX, which is a subsidiary of Amazon. And they have basically a dating app. And
like Tinder, but for voice artists.
So if you're looking for a little action, you can go there. So what they have narrators and they have authors, and so they're bringing you two together. So I went looking for someone, and what they have is they have various categories. So you can look at genre, you can look at age, accent, sex, different categories. So I knew I'd like to think my books have a sense of humor. So I went looking for somebody who had a sense of humor. So they needed to be, my character in my book is in their 30s, so I wanted someone who sounded that way, and they needed to be a man. Although I thought about a woman, I said, no, it's not going to work. And it's interesting because what happens is you submit a little description of your book, and you can put in, I can't remember how many 100 words, but like 3 pages of your book.
Okay.
And you just put that out there, and then you go looking for an author. So I went looking under comedy, and then I went looking under ages, and they have their little snippets of other things that they've done. So you can see, oh, this person's done other mysteries, or they've done this, they've done that. So you get a sense of who these people are.
And you can hear their voices. You can actually hear how they sound.
And so I wanted to hear them do different characters. So that was, I wanted, they can do me, but can they do her, and can they do him? So I wanted, when I was listening, to hear how they did different people. And I got about like 10 people that I thought maybe. And so I reached out to them and said, hi, I listened to you and I think this might work. Take a look at what I've done and let me know if you're interested. And while I was doing that, I also have this sample posted, and other people who I didn't reach out to read that, and they would send me their sample of
I didn't realize that.
So they pitched for it. Yeah.
So that's really good, because that on their end, if you're a narrator, you don't have to wait to be picked. You can go and through things and say, I could, that sounds like me, I can do that.
And let me just ask you, that sampling process, then that's free, is it?
I don't think this is a good deal for narrators. I think it's a good deal for writers. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but they do a lot for free. I think they get a little bit taken advantage, because they submit their sample of your 3 pages. That doesn't cost anything. And as I did with you, Louise, I Skyped the people that I was most interested in.
Yeah.
So then I'm spending half an hour talking to different people. And there was one guy I really liked. I thought, I could be friends with this guy, but I didn't want him as my narrator. But I liked him. So, I mean, you meet people and you get a sense of who they are. And
so, David, when you were effectively auditioning these potential narrators for your book, was it an easy decision to make? Was your ultimate narrator? Did it just feel right to you when they heard their voice, or could you just imagine that was your character talking, or was it a more difficult process than that?
Yes and no. There were some that were easy to say no to. Sort of like dating. There's something. No. But then there are others like, maybe this could work. Maybe this could work. So I had yes, no's, and maybes. And the other thing about this, and I guess we'll talk about money at some point, but these people come with a price tag.
Yeah.
So sometimes sometimes you like something a lot, but maybe you can't afford it.
When you pick Keanu Reeves, it's not a great. That's a problem, isn't it? Or Morgan Freeman.
So I had my narrator that I worked with. When we were talking about prices, and he was saying, well, I talked to my good friend who works at a big publishing house, and this is how much they pay. And I said, I don't think it's fair to compare you and me to these publishing authors. So, so it can be pricey, but I think it's the price of admission. If if 40% a couple of years ago books are being sold that way, you sort of need to get yourself into the marketplace.
I just wondered if perhaps you were talking to somebody and it felt that you were talking to your protagonist, you know, that you sort of strongly identified with somebody's voice in particular as being the right one.
Well, I have a story to tell about what worked and what didn't work, but I did find somebody who I thought was good enough. And part of what I thought that they really did well was I thought they did me really well.
Right.
And so the part of me that's interested in me said, oh, I'm sounding really good here. But they weren't as strong with the characters as they were with me.
Right.
And we'll talk a little bit about the trouble I got into. But initially, the one who had sound most like me was the one I went with. But now I have somebody else who I'm going with.
Right.
If you want, I'll tell you my troubling story or not.
Yeah, we can hear your story.
Okay. Well, it's part of...
Because I'll just say that because I think the other question I wanted to ask you next was about the process of actually working with the narrator. So you've chosen someone, you found them, you've agreed to work together. What happens next? Because, and you've got experience of that. And right. So, you know, that'll be really useful to hear.
Well, hopefully this will be useful because I didn't know what I was doing, which is often the case. But what I did do is I worked with this person, and what happens is they would send me, first off, they send you 15 minutes. This is all for free. They send you the first 15 minutes of your book, or you can pick any 15 minutes approximated, and they can do that so you can have them do different characters or whatever. But they send you 50 minutes, and at that point you say yes or no. And I think it's really hard to say no at that point because you really are pretty invested with this person. But so I mean, some people would say no then, I didn't. So I said yes, and we went forward. And then what happened was he would send me, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes as he went through it. And what I would do is he sent me a little outline, like where I would go chapter 3, page 22, here's the mistake, here's the correction, and here's the time in the audio. So I would send that to him, and then he would correct it. But what happened, and this is where I got in trouble, is I'd listen to him telling the story, and I go, oh, that doesn't sound so good. I'm going to tweak that.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, yeah.
I used him as
another editor.
As another editor. And he rightfully so, but I didn't feel it at the time, but he got cranky about that. And he goes, I don't want to do that. But I go, well, yeah, but I'm hearing this and it doesn't sound right. I want the story to be the best it can be. So we worked together on a couple of books, but he was not happy with my process. And so he basically fired me and said, I can't work with you. So I think people need to know, and this is something you would need to check out with the narrator, how are they with you making corrections, not just correcting their mistakes, but correcting the things that you've written that you want to tweak a little bit.
Yeah.
So with this new person I'm working with, this was something I said to him right at the beginning. How do you feel about this? And can we do this? And he was fine with it. So
that comes up with an issue of in terms of just thinking as well about, you know, when you the different levels of editing you take a book through. So you know, like in terms of if there are, I guess if there are sort of what are more proofreading errors, because I think when you started working through the narration process, you weren't using I was the only editor working on the book, and so you know, of course, when you're line editing, you don't spot everything because there's so much sort of more substantive and stylistic work that. So did you get feedback from the first editor, the first narrator about sort of, well, you know, this isn't as good enough shape. This needs more refinement in terms of, you know, little syntax errors or little spelling errors. Did anything like that crop up?
Not directly, but indirectly.
Okay.
So he, I mean, there were mistakes in it, and this was when I first gave him the books. I'm learning about this editing, writing process, and I didn't send my books to a second editor. So, they were not as clean as they could be. And that was my mistake, because I thought it was good enough. Louise, when you did the first book with me, I just went and I didn't even look at it. And you did. I think, well, she did it. She's the
Holy
pro.
moly.
Oh, no. Good grief.
Holy moly. That's terrifying.
Yeah. So, well, it wasn't terrifying in the moment. I thought, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
But I realize now that, oh, no. But, you know, you're learning. And so this narrator had their professional standards, and I just wasn't ready for them. They were fine, they were good, but I was not prepared for the experience. And since then, my books now, by the time I'm giving them to the narrator, I find maybe half a dozen mistakes that I've made in the book as I go through. But it's pretty clean on my end now. But it
So
wasn't that.
Sorry, Denise, you go.
No, that's absolutely fine. I just think that is a really good lesson for authors that are listening to us about what it is you're planning to do with your book, and thinking about how you allocate your time and your budget for editing. And that experience that you've had, David, with your narrator basically saying, this isn't in good enough shape for me to work with, is something that perhaps people would not have considered. But obviously you didn't, but I don't think many people would have thought that before they hired a narrator, that actually they needed more editing. Well, certainly after Louise's copy edited, you've learned that a proofreader is a very good idea to clean it, to get it into a really...
Yeah, and it is a different process, isn't it?
Totally
It's
different
that a lot of authors, less experienced authors, don't necessarily realize that the value of having different eyes on the book at different stages.
Well, you know, it's costly.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
So to have two editors and a narrator, I mean, that's outgoing money. And so I personally feel like it's an investment. And if I want my investment to pay off, I need to put the time, energy, and money into making it work. But I thought, well, I could just get away with the one. And then I realized, no, I need the two editors.
And I think that comes down to deciding what it is you want to do with your book, and some people may not have the budget to do that, or they may decide that their budget is better spent earlier in the process on developmental editing and line editing, and they'll trust that their, perhaps beta readers or critiques will catch any proofreading typo errors and things like that. It's about priorities, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I would think, I mean, for me, when I first wrote, I wanted to get the books out there. So I've talked to you in our other podcast about I'm not very good with, I like to rush things. And so I wanted it out there already, and I didn't go through the necessary steps. And so if I were giving any advice to someone, I would say, if you have a limited budget, spend what you can spend, but then maybe don't rush to publish it. Wait till you have some more money that you can invest again in the book, so you take longer to get it published, but by the time you get it published, it's in a much cleaner version.
That's great advice.
Really good advice.
Saving up and pacing your, you're still investing the same as another author, but you're maybe just having to go through those stages a little bit more slowly.
Yeah. David, we've talked there about this, the using a narrator has flagged up for you the importance of getting that second step of editing in, but Were there any obstacles that cropped up once you decided to create your audiobooks that you hadn't considered beforehand? Was there anything else that became an issue?
I'm not thinking of anything per se.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you a little bit about the billing, because I think that just talking about money, and this is another place where I think that narrators sort of get the short end of it. They bill by the finished hour, so they don't get billed by how long they take to make.
Really?
That's interesting.
So let's just say your book comes out to be 10 hours, and you go, well, how would I know if my book is 10 hours? And what the formula that I read is 9,300 words make about an hour. So you can do the math and figure out, okay, well, my book's going to be X amount of time. But let's say it comes out to be 10 hours. I guess that would be 93,000 words. And their fee, let's just say, is $300 an hour. That's $3,000 for that 10-hour book. But when I was looking for how much people charge, I didn't see anyone below $200 an hour. That was sort of like the bottom entry. So that means that 10-hour book is going to cost you $2,000. Most people were at $225 to $250, but there were people at $500. So, so that helps. Go on.
That's interesting as well, because they're charging on the final cut. So if they have to edit, let's say it takes them actually an hour and a half to do 9,300 words, and because there are mistakes in it, or they have to sort of like read it through to get the syntax right with a particular scene, it might actually take them longer than 10 hours to do something. But because they're giving you 10 hours of audio, they only bill for 10 hours. Right. So they might be earning less than $200 or $300 per hour in terms of the actual time they put in.
Oh, way less than that an hour, because I'll write them back and go, I thought you paused too much with this one, or this one, they left out a word in the sentence, or this one, I think needs to be a little bit more dramatic. So I'm not that high maintenance, but I imagine some writers are like having lots of corrections, and sometimes he'll read a sentence and he'll leave out a word, and I go, that's okay.
Yeah.
Other times, like, no, that one's got to go back in there the right way. Yeah. So I don't correct every little thing, but it's way more than hour for hour.
So your new guy that you use now, he's interesting because he's an actor as well, isn't he?
Right. Well, most of these narrators are, I don't know most, but many of them are actors.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, it gave me a whole new appreciation for actors. Yeah. Because when I read or listened to what he was doing, the characters came alive in ways I did not anticipate.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he said this one character, he said, is it okay if I make them Eastern European? I'd never thought about that. And he says, well, they say these kind of quirky things. Why don't we do that? And I said, do it. And now I love that character. And now when I write that character, I hear that.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So the first person you used was like, you're just interfering too much. You want to you don't want to change the voice. You want to do that. But your new guy is actually sort of collaborating with you in that and saying, like, I think we could make he's offering you ideas for how to sort of develop the characterization of it, which is lovely.
Yeah. Well, what I do is I send him a list of characters and maybe a few sentences description of the characters. So, and what he'll do is he'll send me an audio of him reading my description, and then he'll riff on it. Like, oh, this person is like this way, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
He'll do his whole thing with it, and I go, I love to hear his character. I go, oh, that's so cool. I love that character. Or I go, oh no, this one, let's tone it down a little bit. But most of his takes on my characters, that gets me to fall in love with my characters all over again. So,
Is
really
he an
nice.
Is he an American? And is he Californian? I mean, is he part of that whole sort of LA, acting scene thing, or is
No, he's a New York struggling actor. I don't know if I should say struggling. He's an actor in New York, but he's smarter than I am, and he got his degree in college in Slavic languages.
Oh
Oh,
wow.
wow.
So that's what he said, Eastern European. He's
Yeah.
but he's a character actor.
Yeah.
So he really brings something to the characters. And when he does his little script for me about the characters, he gets into them.
Yeah.
I can see he likes being this person. He likes being that one. And so I have some recurring characters. And I have one recurring character that Louise does not like. And every time she's this guy.
Which one's that? Which one's that?
That's Bennett.
Oh, Bennett. Oh God, yeah, Bennett.
Yeah.
Well, that's good that he evokes a strong reaction in you, Louise.
I know. I like Lucky though.
Yeah, but I mean, Lucky is the one he made Eastern European.
Did he? Yeah, it works. It works.
So, but Bennett is, if you listen to him doing Bennett, you'll go, oh, I have a whole other, I mean, you won't like him that much anymore, but you'll get a different feel for him than you would have just read it. So I love to read books, but I'm telling you, if I was recommending my book to somebody, I would say get the audio.
Okay.
It sounds like you've got a real gem there, David, that
Yeah.
you really struck the right person who's going to do your books justice and because I think bringing your characters to life has to be the most important thing in an audiobook, really, and to find somebody who can do that in a way that you're happy with is really, really special. I think that's great.
Well, sure. And if you're doing nonfiction and you're having somebody read it, you want them to have whatever authoritative or what type of voice, you want them to have your voice or the voice of what you're trying to say. So it's really important. But what I've learned is it's a team. So Louise is on the team, Gary on the team, and we're working collaboratively to get these books in the best shape they can be.
Which I just think goes to prove that although writing can be very much a solitary business, actually to bring it to life and to get it out there in front of people, it does take teamwork, doesn't it?
It has for me, and I imagine you two can attest to it being so for other writers.
Definitely.
Yes, that was always the best way.
Yeah, David, that was brilliant. I think audiobooks is something that a lot of people perhaps will consider, but perhaps not know where to start. And I think your experience that you've shared today will really be helpful for authors who are considering audiobooks but don't know the implications of wanting to do that or the costs. And it's certainly given them food for thought about what they need to consider before they bring in a narrator. I think that's been hugely helpful. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's that story just about how learning about some of the mistakes that you made or the ways in which the lessons you learned. There's back to your lessons again, just like your books, their lessons, really valuable. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to do it. And I will tell you that the ACX, I'm not getting anything out of promoting them, but they have a very good customer service. So I've written them many times. They get back to me usually within 24 hours and say, what about this? How does this, da, da, da. So I think for people who get a little scared about getting into a different universe, they're pretty helpful to helping you navigate your way through.
That's great to know. That's really helpful. So now it's time for Editing Bites, and this is our regular feature where we recommend a tool or resource to help you on your writing journey. Louise, what have you got for us this week?
So this week, I want to recommend a book by John Yorke called Into the Woods. Yorke is a successful screenwriter, and so while he didn't really write this book for novelists or book editors, there's tons of great stuff in it that I know lots of editors love this, and authors can learn from too. And he's particularly good on dialogue, and he's the person who really helped me sort of kind of think of dialogue in terms of a sort of framework or paradigm that to help me kind of when I'm triaging a dialogue in a novel to make sure it's working. So that's mine. What have you got?
Well, just before I tell you what I've got, I would agree that John Yorke book is great. Although I'm a non-fiction editor, I've got a copy of it myself, and it's just really useful. And I bagged it for 99p on my Kindle one day. So keep your eye open on Amazon, because you never know where you get these offers. Yeah. So my editing bite this week is the Writers Forum magazine. The subtitle of this magazine is How to Write, What to Write, Where to Sell It, which pretty much says it all, really.
Yeah.
It's got advice for writers about marketing, cover design, including some templates. It has competitions, it has exercises and writing prompts and things. It's absolutely packed full. It's really good value. I think it costs about $2.99 a month. It's well worth having a look at that. You can get it online, and you can get it in newsagents as well.
So that's it. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Editing Podcast. You can rate, review and subscribe to us via Apple Podcasts, Spotify or whichever platform you prefer.
And we'll put all the links we've mentioned in the show notes so you can grab everything there. And thank you once again, David, for talking to us.
Thank you, David.
Bye.
Thank you.